Hey, everybody, welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. You're in the team room. You've got Aaron and I, and we wanted to talk to you about a few things that really we have kind of lived the entire time within Special Operations. And Special Operations Command has what they call SOF Truths or Special Operations Force Truths. And it's kind of the mantra that all of us try and live by and aspire to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop on into each one of them and give you some details on kind of what they are and what our perspectives are on them.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then enjoy. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Hopefully you've enjoyed the Soft Truths 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to jump into Soft Truth 4, which is competent special operations forces cannot be created after an emergency occurs or after emergencies occur. So, man, this is an interesting one, especially in a time where we're actually recording this, where, we're not in Afghanistan, we're not in Iraq. For all intents and purposes, operations have slowed down. There's not much, quote unquote, not much going on, right? Which is kind of a fallacy, but we can't get into it here.
Because we're that cool, everybody.
Yeah.
Our ops are way blacker than yours.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
You have no idea.
I would tell you, but data masked. I can't wait. We're just going to add unnecessary clown horns in here. Like, I was in this country and then I was doing this, and all you're going to hear is
just all kinds of speculation going on.
I love it. Rampant speculation. It's fantastic.
So, yeah, where we're at now, where SOCOM's at now. So I think it's important to kind of highlight historical data. We've had Chief Lampy on, we've had some John Corn on, and so which are some significant historical figures, right? At least in Air Force Special Warfare. And, you had in April of 1980, you had Desert One Eagle Claw happen, which kind of sparked a lot of the stuff to where SOCOM is today. You got the 1986, the Goldwater Nichols Act that helped the DoD reorganization. And then SOCOM was established in April of 87. And then kind of that was not the mass production, it wasn't mass production, but it was the kind of creation of the official special operations. And then since then, really, there's been no creation of special operations because we already existed, but it's important to note that special operations has been consistent throughout the time. We haven't really ramped up production. We haven't decreased production, even when there wasn't operations going on or high level combat operations going on. We didn't decrease special operations forces. We maintained an increased capability throughout that time.
Right. Yeah. And so all of these are sort of rooted in after action reports or lessons learned, right? Like if you look at the soft truths, it's pretty apparent. We're like, hey, we learned our lesson. Humans are more important than hardware. Quality is more important than quantity. You cannot mass produce these forces. And go back and listen to those other episodes that we've done and that we've dropped, and we kind of go into deep dives with all of them. But this truth has always stuck out to me, like truth 4, that, competent special forces cannot be created after emergencies occurred. This one is just so plainly apparent. Like, we learned our lesson. So the Iran hostages, basically ramped up this operation, right? Eagle Claw was the operation. Desert One was the actual location where this happened. And essentially what happened is this is a huge failure. Like, this operation, things happen. Murphy happens, right? Long story short, they're refueling at Desert One using new equipment, new tactics, new techniques, new personnel on a new team under a new construct that wasn't very well defined. And they had 2 helicopters impact each other at Desert One, right? And we were unable to complete the mission. And go listen to John Corinne talk about this episode. He goes into a deep dive. I'll link it here on the cards or whatever. Absolutely insane. Everything that could go wrong, every piece of bad luck that could have happened. But at the end of it, people looked at it and they're like, okay, we cannot come up with a force in response. We need to have a trained force, right? And if you think about, again, we've been trying to like leave you little breadcrumbs through all of these things. We need to have specifically trained specifically equipped people that are small teams, that are well led, that are able to work with, either the best equipment or no equipment at all. Because humans are more important than hardware. We need these people to just get the mission done. And essentially, they looked at Eagle Claw and what happened at Desert One, and that led to the Goldwater-Nichols Act, which was essentially every Congress looking at it and going, "Listen, we need a separate command of folks. We need a separate group of people that are looking at these special operations." There's the larger military and the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines. They have their own duties and responsibilities, but we need a specific command that is looking at this 1% of special operations so that something like this doesn't happen. And that's where SOCOM came from. That's where the command of SOCOM came from. So Truth 4 says a creation of competent, fully mission capable units takes time. Employment of fully capable special operations capability on short notice requires highly trained and constantly available SOF units in peacetime. That, man, like today, like no other, and you already alluded to it. The question that we get all the time is, oh, well, things aren't going on right now. I don't really know if I want to get in there. I'm always reminded. I'm just stealing this quote from Justin Perrin, who came on the podcast. He was like, very famously on a talk that we were having, he said, on September 10th of 2001, no Green Berets were working with combat controllers on horseback. There were no horseback schools of Green Berets and combat controllers working together. But on September 11th, 2001, all that changed. And less than 30 days later, ODA, Triple Nickel 555 was in country on horseback, working with the CIA, working with the Northern Alliance to break the back of the Taliban. You cannot mass produce special operations forces, right? We just covered that in the last one. More importantly, you can't do it after emergencies occur. Yeah. You have to be there for the invasion. Newsflash, everybody. The invasion and phase 1 is the fun part, okay? I know that phase 0 isn't fun, but you got to be there in phase 0 in order to play in phase 1, or you're going to miss it.
And not just be there. You, like all of the soft truths that we provided before this, 1, 2, and 3, they all feed into phase 0. They feed into those individuals that are there for phase 0, because that's really where special operations makes its money, in phase 0 and phase 1, right? I know that there is some discussion that we have had, but there are some critiques that are out there that that U.S. shouldn't have a standing army, right? Kind of, which I disagree with, maybe in some regards, but not special operations. When we start talking about, your assessment and selections, humans are more important than the hardware, and we start, special operations can't be mass produced. Like, we can't just up and make special operations forces. It takes years, and especially, and we're not talking about, so the folks that graduate the pipeline and earn their beret, and they're done with free fall and scuba and all that kind of stuff. They're essentially, they arrive at their unit. They can deploy. They are worldwide deployable, but they are not at a level that tech sergeant or that mass sergeant is at, that has been doing this job for years. They're safe, right? But they are not the ones that are going to go, hey, you 3 or you 7 or whatever it is, go out there to X country and you're going to operate this. They are not ready for that. And you can't just shit that out, right?
Right.
Like, it doesn't just happen.
You have to grow it from somewhere. We joke about it, right? Like, what do we just had a pararescue graduation happen. And what's the joke? Congratulations. Now go back to being a cherry fuck at your units.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's a harsh way, but that's what we're talking about. It takes years to develop competent team leaders in these organizations. It takes decades to get to a point where you have a guy that can stand up with a fully credible, fully capable, fully qualified, and he can look at a commander somewhere and go, hey, this is a special operation. I have the team that can make this happen. Here's the risk that you're going to need to assume. Now I want you to give me this mission. And that commander goes, yep, you got it. That doesn't happen right away. It doesn't happen right out of school. It doesn't happen on your first deployment. My first deployment, I came back with more questions about myself and more questions about my capabilities than I had answers. Every deployment you learn something new, and every deployment, like nobody has figured it out. Nobody had, the Special Operations Command, focusing on Soft Truth 4, we have decades of after action reports of both good and bad things. Some of the raids that have went correctly and some of the raids that have went wrong. We've lost. Naval Special Warfare has lost a hostage on target. If you look at the failures on Takur Gar and, Operation Anaconda, if you look at, the exfil from Afghanistan and HKIA, like there are lessons learned that we have taken from those things, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. And we've added that to our library to learn and to continue. And you have to have a constant process that's getting ready for the next thing. You can't stop that. The second that you stop that process, it's over. Like, you cannot continue to have what you call a competent special operations force if you just are like, well, we'll just wait for the next thing. You can't wait for the next thing. You have to be preparing for a multitude of things and then using the expertise and your experience and the lessons learned from the previous things in order to go fix the problem. We might not know what it looks like. Using the example of September 10th, 2001, we might not know that we have to go into a mountainous country to, essentially work with a guerrilla force, work with the Northern Alliance in order, to kill people that killed Americans, right? In the same token, maybe next time it's in the Indo-Pacific theater. Maybe it's in we're working island chains and we're working on forward C2, and maybe it's non-kinetic warfare, and maybe it's a completely different enemy. We don't know. But what we know is that you can't just magic a force up after those things. When the flag goes up, it's too late.
No.
We pride ourselves anywhere in the world, like the pararescue community. There's a pararescue team right now with men, weapons, and equipment, and the ability to go anywhere in the world in 72 hours, set up shop, and start pulling alert. Do you think that there's no planning that goes into that? Do you think that years before, like, we have figured this out over years of responding to places like Haiti, responding to places like HKIA, responding to places that are having avalanches, responding to Hurricane Katrina, responding to things like, hey, 4 hours from now, we're going to ask the Moffett guys to go jump from 1,200 feet into the open ocean to save someone's life.
Yeah.
That's just Tuesday. But you can't figure this out after the fact. You can't plan. You can't start your planning when you get the mission. That's not how this works.
But Aaron, they don't show that in the movies.
They don't. Well, it's because it's not sexy. It's years and years and years. And I will say that they like, this does breed frustration with the guys. Because the dirty secret of this is there's the possibility where you could train your whole life and never get the call. But that's not the point. I mean, it sucks, man. It does. And I get, when I look at this soft truth that competent special operations forces can't be created after emergencies occur, there was a whole bunch of dudes post-Vietnam, pre-9/11, that didn't have a lot of emergencies. Okay? The overwhelming majority of the forces at that point, the 80s PJ, the 90s PJ, man, there was not like a large scale conflict after Desert One happened in 91. Some people had some good lessons learned and talked about it a little bit. We had, Somalia popped off. What was that, 93? Black Hawk Down, October. Gothic Serpent was the name of that operation, if you want to look it up. So we had some experiences, and the tier 1 guys were always doing tier 1 things. But if you weren't like chasing down war criminals in Europe and you weren't part of those operations, there was a time where like these emergencies didn't occur, and people can get frustrated of training and never having the thing. Well, then we saw the other side of the coin in GWAT, where dudes were jobbing. I mean, just, and that's where, Peaches and I lived our entire careers, was really in the global war on terror, where it was, like clockwork. We were just on the road, right? So there's gonna be ebbs and flows. But the point of that is that you can't just respond. Like, imagine if we were just, in the 90s, we were just like, all right, listen, there's a couple operations, we're going to stop training so hard. Stuff is pretty stable. Nothing's going to happen. Imagine our response in 2001. We had people out the door in 2 weeks after 9/11. We were killing people for their actions in America like 16 days after September 11th. In real terms, right?
That's a good book. The man, I hate it when I do this. I always forget. It's the men, the mission, the me, or the mission, the men, and me. I'll get it right.
Yeah. No, it's a fantastic book. Was that Pete Blaber, I believe?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic book where he talks specifically about that. And then another good book on this one that really talks about the training that goes into it is another guy was Paul Howe, Leadership and Training for the Fight. And he talks about the amount of training that goes into being ready for these things and how you cannot create these things. And he's, double-digit deployments with. I want to say retired as a sergeant major, went into law enforcement after that. But 2 good books to really read that really hits home on SOF Truth 4 that you can't create these forces after emergencies occur. You just can't. It requires highly trained and constantly available SOF units in peacetime. And that's where we are right now. And that's why SOF Truth 4, extremely important, something to focus on.
Yep. No, I appreciate it. And for everybody out there, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that review button or hit that like button and notification button, and then leave us a review because that would really, really help us out.
Just smash that subscribe button and just absolutely destroy. All
right, everybody. Light 'em.